And hello, welcome to Sikich Live. We are at episode 10 today. We are going to be talking about ERP failures. I'm Ryan, and I'm not Michael today. I'm filling in for Michael today, but he will be back next week. And today we are going to be talking with Lee House. And Lee, he's a partner here at Sikich. He knows everything there is to know about ERP systems, and you are the perfect guest today for our discussion about why most ERP implementations fail.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me here today, Ryan. So look forward to this. This is certainly a hot topic in the ERP space, and with business leaders that are either currently going through an ERP implementation or with leaders that are considering doing a project.
And so we'll just jump right into it. So the first question I have is it true that most ERP implementations fail? There's a figure that gets thrown around. It's like about 70% ERP implementations just failure. I mean, does that track?
Yeah, I think that's a very interesting statistic, and frankly, I question it in a lot of ways because I think a lot of it is how a business measures success or failure in a project itself. I will say that I think that a lot of projects probably end up failing in the eyes of leadership. Is it 70%? I think that, again, I think that's probably a little bit high, but certainly a lot of ERP projects will go off the rails and will end up extending beyond what they should. So, but again, it's a great topic to discuss, and certainly something that we like to talk to people about and really help them to stay the course and ensure that they are in fact successful.
Now, you mentioned something very interesting, like in the eyes of leadership, that these things fail, maybe not necessarily data-wise or things like that. I mean, does that lend itself to like a spectrum of failure? Like, are people just poor communication all the way to like you turn on the computer and it just starts on fire the second the ERP boots up?
Yeah. I think that we talk to companies all the time about the success criteria that they need to look at when they're assessing an ERP project. And we'd like to believe that if a business takes those criteria into account, not only during their evaluation process, but also during the actual project, that we will help them to mitigate the overall risk that is associated, with any type of project, not just an ERP project, but any type of an IT project. So really, at the end of the day, I mean, it really does. It all starts with leadership. I mean, these are big projects, and if the leaders within the organization are on board with the project, they're the ones that really set the tone. They set the tone for the project. They set the tone for the overall organization, what's communicated, what the goals are of the project, which are really, really important, when you look at this, and then a number of other things, that fall into place that are going to, help to ultimately determine, success or failure in the eyes of the business.
Now, let's just get into kind of the nuts and bolts of it. What are the reasons that these go the way they do?
Yeah. I mean, there's a handful. I mentioned this a little bit earlier. There's a handful of reasons that we really look at. Number one, again, I think executive sponsorship is a real key to any project, right? Employees in a business will look to the executives to set the pace, set the tone for the engagement itself. It doesn't mean the executives involved, in the nuts and bolts of the project itself, but it shows that they support, what's going on. So that's one area. Another area is, well-defined objectives and requirements that are associated with the project itself. So having a real clear idea of what your goal is in terms of what you want to address, with an ERP project is instrumental, because what that will help to determine is, we're at point A, we want to get to point Z. What are the things that we need to hit from a requirement standpoint in between to make sure that we're measuring and assessing the overall success of this engagement? As a part of that, and when you look at requirements, businesses do a great job of working to define the requirements of a project. And if they don't, that's something that we really shine with as well, where we can help a business to define what those requirements are. But once you get into the project itself, and if you're working with a really good systems integrator, they will talk to you about this during the evaluation prior to ultimately making the decision. Having a really good design phase, as a part of the project is really, really key, because that's where you're going to be really getting into the weeds of what those requirements are, refining what those requirements are. So again, that you can execute, against that. And again, ultimately, determine, success. Another area that's really, really important that we found is project management. Having a great project manager is really, really key. A project manager will help to keep a project on track. They'll help to manage resources, come up with scheduling. They're going to be the face to the systems integrator as well, where they're working hand in hand with a company like Sikich. So having great project management is really, really important, as a part of this. And in conjunction with project management is scope management. Again, when you look at the overall requirements that you come up with, you want to make sure that you're managing to those. If you start to, go outside the rails, you risk prolonging a project. And again, that's one of those things that can ultimately lead to the assessed success or failure of the engagement. Next thing that I think, should really be considered as a part of this is, the project team that the customer has. So making sure that you put, really, great, resources on the project, people that really understand the business itself, can really streamline the overall engagement, can streamline the decision-making timeline that goes in conjunction with a project. So having great resources from the client team is really, really important as well. Training is always key. Businesses need to make sure they invest in training, and that's not only the training of the subject matters and train the trainer type of things associated with the project, but it's also training end users and making sure that you invest the time to ensure that the end users are up to speed, because they in turn will know what the expectations are of the project or of the solution itself and how to use it. And the last thing I'll say is having a great systems integrator. So working with a business that has been there, done that has worked and has a proven track record, proven methodology, can talk about a lot of the things that I'm talking about, right here today with proof points, is going to really help, a business to mitigate the overall risk associated with these types of projects. So, working with a great systems integrator is only going to help to bolster a business's position.
So it just sounds like, based on the things you're talking about, that really it's like an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure a lot of times. And
yep. Go ahead, Ron.
And like, let's say they're a company was really hot to go. They didn't take those preventative measures, and they're in these kind of well-defined problematic areas that you find. Is there like some that are easier to come in and fix?
So you're asking the question, so if we get engaged with a business that has already kind of gone off the rails, and how we might, work with them to fix it. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. They're kind of in that, like, the moment of realization, like, oh no, like, what do we do now? Is there one of those things where maybe the project management kind of went sideways initially, that, a new person, somebody maybe more experienced, could come in and fix that easily, versus something like they didn't have clear goals?
Yeah. That's a fair question. So we have, so again, going back to, success or failure of a project. So ideally a company doesn't get to the point that Ryan just laid out, where they've gone off the rails. If a business has the appropriate checks and balances associated in a project where you've got a project governance model, again, strong project leadership within the business, strong project management from a systems integrator, steering committee, direct access to executives, making sure everybody's on the same page at all times. You're going to avoid some of those pitfalls. We have gotten involved with businesses after the fact, where we have gone in and done what I will call a rescue, where they have gone off the rails. And a lot of times what we find when we're talking to those types of businesses, they've not done a good job of incorporating some type of a governance model into the project itself. They haven't adhered to the scope. They were not doing a great job of communicating internally. They weren't doing a great job, from a change management standpoint. They weren't allocating, the resources that they needed to the project. And when we get involved in situations like that, we will take very much an open book approach, with the account, where it's like, okay, we want to understand why you are where you are today. But, more importantly, as we want to take that information, document it, and then lay out a great plan for them to ensure that we can get them back on the right path with all the things that we've mentioned during this call, and then employ rigor and discipline into the project itself. If a company buys off on that, then we can get them back on track, very, very quick, just with showing them, hey, look, by, measurable milestones, regular discussions, open communication, we can get a business back where they need to be really, really fast, and can get the corporate stakeholders, in a position where they feel good about the project itself.
And so, like, what are the signs then that rescue, that recovery scenario is taking hold?
Yeah. You know what? If we're collaborating, I mean, working with clients that are active, that are collaborating, that are holding themselves accountable, where we're holding ourselves accountable, and then we're holding each other accountable, for the engagement itself. When you see all those things start to fall into place, and again, with a great systems integrator, you're gonna see that. It's pretty obvious. If you're not seeing those types of things as a part of a project, then you need to come up with a plan so that you can take corrective action to get the engagement back on track. But again, it requires discipline and rigor, good project management. And so yeah, that's a good question. But fortunately for us, we can see things swing pretty quick when we go into a recovery type of a situation.
Fantastic. So I think we covered a lot of ground today. But before we leave, are there 3 things that you want to mention? Just saying that, if you're in like an ERP implementation mode, what are the 3 things, like the 3 best things that somebody can do to make sure that they get on that right track, that they're a step off on the right foot?
Yeah. So number 1, again, make sure you've got a great plan in place, and that's a realistic plan. Make sure that you're, as a part of that, you're mapping out the right timelines, you've got the right resources involved, that you're working with, a great, systems integrator. So number 1, have a good plan. Number 2, don't, look for a company, to help you to do the implementation that will come in and you feel will challenge you organizationally and is not afraid to say why. You want a company, as a systems integrator, that understands that their goal and objective is to help you as a business be better off on the back end of the project itself. So you want a company that can help you to go down that path and achieve operational excellence on the back end. So that would be the second thing. The last thing that I would say, as you look at all this is, just, look to work with, a business that you feel has got your best interest in mind. So, points 1 and 2 that I just made, if you're working with a business that understands those kind of things, that understands the important aspects that we discussed during this in terms of how to ensure project success, they're going to have your best interest in mind. They're going to be in there helping you to ensure that you hit the milestones that you want as the project, and are ultimately going to, yield the success factors that you want to be associated with an ERP project.
Fantastic. Lee, thank you so much. It's always a pleasure to have you here. And I mean, that's just a ton of great information that, I think is just going to resonate with a lot of people. So again, thank you. And we will talk to you soon.
Thanks, Ryan.
And that's it for Sikich Live number 10 today, why most ERP implementations fail. And hopefully you got a taste of how to get yourself on the right track. And we will be back next week with Michael. And that's all we have today. So thank you very much.